Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the Wise Ones. I'm Red O'Laughlin, USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I am very, very honored today to have a good friend. He and I were doing a lot of networking together well before COVID. Things happened, haven't run into him in a while, and all of a sudden I see him start popping up on LinkedIn. He's on this page and on that one, and boom. And so I reconnected with him, and he's here today, and I have some really interesting questions to ask him about how we operate mentally, because he is an expert, probably one of the first in the field in neuro-linguistic programming. He's also a hypnotist, and I've seen him do marvelous jobs. Good afternoon, Victor.
Good afternoon, Red. Good to connect with you again.
It has been a while, a long while.
I would say at least 4 years, maybe a
I
little
guess
longer.
probably more than that, because Tracy was really big in helping both of us way back when, and then he passed away, and then COVID came, and we kind of all buried ourselves in different places. And I see you emerging now on social media much more so than before. And I know you're really into business training and consulting and stuff like that. But I want to pick you up from the beginning. How did you really and truly get involved with helping people? Because I read one of the articles that you did a while back, 3 or 4 years ago, and you talked about helping a nurse with some emotional problems. Can you kind of give us an idea how you started in this emotional healing for other people?
Yes, I'd be happy to. That's a very good question. So here's the story. I was just completing my first level certification in neurolinguistic programming, and I had a dear friend of mine that had moved away to another state, and she was back in town. She was just visiting friends and family, and she called me up and she says, "Hey, Victor, I'd like to reconnect with you. We haven't seen each other, in a couple of years." So when we got together, she told me that she was going through a very difficult time in her life, and she had a condition that she had seen all the specialists and they couldn't help her. It was vaginal bleeding. So when I got the story, I understood exactly what, excuse me, what was going on with her. So I did a light hypnosis trance. And in that moment, she felt the bleeding just stop like that. She said, I can feel the change right now. And so she reached in her pocket and handed me $400 cash. And in that instant, I mean, it was tremendous gratification. But in that instant, I knew that I was destined to do this kind of work.
Events, and there was maybe 12, 15 people there. One young guy, I think he'd gotten back from Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever. And you asked anybody had any PTSD issues or some traumatic events, and he raised his hand, and you went through the entire preview earlier on that about visualizing everything in color turning to black and white, and then visualizing it on a cell phone, on a tablet, on your TV, on a movie screen, and moving the screen off to the right. You gave us a lot of different visuals. And as you're sitting there in your mind looking at these things, you can feel your body change because of what you're actually watching. And I thought wow, that's such an amazing thing. And then you offered, says, does anybody in here have a problem? And you basically, in the midst of all this, I think gave him a quick hypnotic session, for lack of a better word. And literally within about 15 minutes, you were able to lead him down the path where when you brought him back out again, he was amazed at, again, how quickly something that had been not necessarily terrifying, but certainly disturbing, wasn't as such.
I actually followed up with that young man, Red. 2 or 3 years later, I followed up with him to see how he was doing, and we reconnected and had another meeting. And he told me how that one session that was, as you're right, about 15 minutes. From that one session, he was able to overcome one of the biggest business obstacles that he would encounter because the business took a nosedive and he nearly had to shut down. And he visualized that exercise I had him do to get through it, to re-engineer himself and to pivot away into another business.
I just thought it was very, very remarkable because literally in minutes, you're able to determine a problem, figure out which one of the solutions you have works the best, and then lead that person through that solution. And at the end, actually see results. I'm still blown away by that.
Yes, that's amazing to me. And again, one of the things that I tell people is the brain learns instantly. It is not learning that takes a long time. And a lot of practitioners, they try to do different interventions and different techniques and what have you, but there's no metrics for success. Okay. So when I work with someone, I can test right there on the spot. It's like, did the change take place? And if not, what else am I missing? Because sometimes, let's face it, a deeply rooted problem has roots that funnel out into different domains, and I want to make sure that I really go deep to pull the problem out from the root so that that problem goes away forever.
NLP, why don't you, for people in our audience who are not familiar with it, why don't you give us a little lesson on what is it and how does it work?
NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. Even though it's highly controversial, or it was in its infancy, neuro deals with the brain circuits, how our brain has different triggers that we run on autopilot. Linguistic is the language that we use with ourselves as well as communicating with others. And then the programming is that programming from the past that is right there on autopilot. Excuse me. I'm just overcoming a cough. each day, Red, we have approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. About 90% are unconscious. That's the programming that's always running there in the background. And so when we take something that is unconscious and we make it conscious, then we can begin to develop a model to be able to undo the unconscious programming so that the person can experience relief.
I remember he was kind of a mini mentor at the time, and he was reflecting back over some of the job interviews he had. And one of the things that he enjoyed doing was that if the interviewer was sitting back with his hands on his lap, he would sit back with his hands on his lap, but he would mimic every single thing that the interviewer was doing. And as such, the interviewer felt much more comfortable with him because there was some emotional connection
Yes.
with the mirror image of his
Yes.
body language.
Exactly.
And I thought,
I got to tell you a funny story about that because exactly that's called the mirror technique. I was recently doing a training for law enforcement, and I had them do an exercise of matching and mirroring, which is basic NLP, and then the one of the participants didn't know that I had given him instructions to start mismatching. Okay, if the person was leaning into you, you lean back. If the person had their hands crossed, you uncross your hands. And it was so funny that the person that was being mismatched broke out in the face flushed, and he was even sweating because he was having a visceral reaction to the other person, even though this was an exercise. Two officers doing this exercise, because again, this is unconscious. And when I debriefed him, I asked him, "It's like, what was running through your mind?" And he says, I was very nervous because I thought, well, it's like, am I saying something that's stupid? There's something that's wrong here. I don't know what it is, but it must be me. And so again, that's the programming that the person tends to run in the back of their mind whenever they're out of rapport. Rapport is the ability to create a state of responsiveness.
now when we're stressed, we always hear, "Don't hold on to it, let it go." But
Yes,
but there's some things that even we hold on to it for 5 minutes because it's whatever the nature of the thing is. But if we think about it, it's not important. Let it go. But
hmm
is NLP something that I can do myself to relieve stress, or do I need to go
a
to a
lot.
practitioner?
There's a lot of techniques that you can do on your own. Let me tell you, when I first got started in NLP, it was in its infancy. All of my trainers were first generation students of the founders of NLP, Bandler and Grinder. They studied at the feet of these two geniuses, and there was only two books that were in print. Today, there are literally thousands upon thousands of books and free videos that someone can watch on YouTube or TikTok related to NLP. So there's a lot of techniques that you can do on your own for free.
Things come up all the time. It amazes me. It's been there, as you say, for years, decades in some cases, and it's effective. Yet we're unaware of it. Uh,
Correct.
I was talking with a lady the other day, and she was talking about rapid eye movement for PTSD,
I'm
and
familiar with that technique. Yes.
I think I don't know anything about this. And
Yeah.
then I was actually at a networking event about 2 months ago, and somebody actually demonstrated that to the audience right while we were there. And I'm thinking, okay. And so it's interesting that there is just so much stuff out there that from an awareness perspective, we don't know. But I love to get
I'll
people.
tell you something interesting about that because I was trained in inside of NLP. We had a module for doing eye movement desensitization. It was developed originally by I think it was Dr. Callahan, and then I took a certification program to where it's the next generation. Uh, is called brain spotting. Brain spotting is where you identify a specific point in the brain through using a pointer, a regular pointer that you can buy on Amazon, but you identify the area where the trauma or the hiccup was recorded in the brain, and then through different techniques you can unblock that, because what happens is you got a bottleneck of emotions that couldn't be processed, and that creates for life a pattern that the person defaults into under stress or under different conditions. And so through brain spotting we can identify specifically where the brain is representing that trauma so that we can clear it up. And it's phenomenal. Again, I've always been drawn to techniques that are easy, they're fast, and you can move on with your life.
And it's interesting that sometimes the trauma that happens to you is really debilitating at times, mentally and physically. And other times, you may be the only one in whatever event that walks away with it unscathed, and you are still carrying the scars of that event, even though you physically didn't suffer anything.
Again, the brain learns instantly. A phobia is a one-time learning experience, Red. Think about someone that is phobic about mice. They see a mouse, they go into this intense emotional response, and that brain now is wired for life to have the same reaction from seeing a mouse. Okay, again, that's the efficiency and that's the elegance of the brain. And just like you can learn it, you need to unlearn whatever it is that needs to be cleared.
I've heard or I've seen a couple stories that when elephants are very young, they'll chain them to literally just something in the ground, and they learn that they can't undo that particular that thing is stopping them. But if something happens, whatever urge, sexual, food, whatever becomes dominant enough, they can just rip that thing right out of the ground, keep working like there was nothing there. But that brain, as you said, had a memory of something that happened that they were unable to overcome, and they just left that in their brain.
That's correct. That's conditioning. And those become imprint experiences that logic cannot overcome the imprint. You can positively think about something, but again, if the circuit has a negative reaction and imprint, no amount of positive thinking is going to overcome that. We've also, I'm sure you've heard the story of tigers, that they were in a cage for extended period of time. They put them inside of area in the zoo that they prepared for them, and they won't get out of the cage because again, they are inside the comfort zone. People are the same way. They stay in a comfort zone and they don't want to veer out away from that.
Yeah, I've heard a similar story with monkeys and cold water and a
Mhm.
ladder and bananas, and it's the way we've always done things, even though they never experienced that. The culture made that adaptation possible because even though they didn't experience, everyone else did, and that cultural aspect stayed with them.
Correct. That's a survival social programming that we have. Again, we can be thankful that we have this primitive mind, because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be alive. Because again, we are wired to survive. We're wired. Prior to our discussion today, I was explaining to you how the brain is wired for pain. We tend to gravitate towards pain, and some people fear pain. You just need to understand that that's what how your brain is wired. After you get over the pain, there's tremendous relief and satisfaction, character building, and a purposeful life.
Yeah, when you mentioned that to me, I was okay, fine. It sort of makes sense. And I've been thinking about it since then. I was going to bring it up in our conversation. I'm glad you did because it seems like people's pain thresholds are immensely different. Uh,
Look at your journey in the Camino Sagrado, okay? How painful was that?
the first day was unbelievable, almost to a point that we were ready to give up after 20 some miles of walking over the Pyrenees Mountains. I mean, it wasn't just the physical part of it. We got to our hotel and our baggage hadn't gotten there. And so now I'm going back into France to the hotel I was at, and I'm thinking to myself, I just spent a couple $1,000s on all sorts of stuff. Am I going to have to buy everything to continue this? Am I going to go home? I was working myself into a frazzle about all these what ifs until I know what's going on. Well, my bag's sitting right where it was, right where I left it that morning at 5 o'clock. It never got picked up. Uh,
Wow.
but there was
But
some.
look at on the other side of that pain, how there was tremendous relief and a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment that yay, I made it.
And what you're saying right now is so true, because sometimes we get over that little hurdle, even if it's an incremental hurdle. We
Yes,
celebrate that victory, and
absolutely.
it is amazing that little celebration, even if it's just a smile in the brain. I got that
Yes,
one. Uh,
yes.
lasts a long time and actually feels emotionally not draining but fulfilling in the body.
Well, you're a health researcher. You know that there's a release of the hormones that rebuild our body, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, and there's like five. From that pleasure, there's that release of those hormones that are good for our body.
So, well, I know that we could probably spend another hour or two talking about NLP and hypnotism, and I've been hypnotized twice, and both times I didn't think I was until I actually had to come back out of it, and I found out that I had. It was difficult to go from the hypnotic state back to reality, even though I was aware of everything. I just had a transitionary problem of becoming alive again. But is that something that most people experience?
Well, let me tell you something. We as human beings live in a trance state. Okay, we go from trance state to trance state. For example, first thing you do when you wake up and you realize that you're coming back to consciousness, you're in a waking up trance. Okay, to where you're getting your senses. You get out of bed, you put your feet on the floor, you go to the bathroom, that's another trance. You get in the shower, that's another trance. So throughout our daily waking life, Red, we go from trance state to trance state to trance state. So when I do a hypnotic induction on someone, it's a trance that is unfamiliar to them because again they don't necessarily sit around being guided to go back into their past to fix something, but depending on the level of depth of trance state that you go into, that determines what is your reaction coming back. If you go really really deep and look at the trance phenomenology to where the person is not totally there when they come back and open their eyes, and I give them time, either giving them some water to drink, or I even have them get up and walk around for a little bit before I can begin to process the experience. Because again, they went really deep, and it's like they think they're awake, but they're not. The mind, it's almost like they're sleepwalking because that's just the way the brain works. Think
We,
about it like this, Red. And again, you do a lot of research on mental processes and sleep. It's like the person went into the delta brain wave to where that's where you do rapid eye movement, the dream state, where most of the change happens. And so that's what it's like to come out of a deep trance back into a waking trance.
I know one of the trances. There's two trances that I have been very, very aware of. One is driving long distances,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
boom, before you know it, you're 200 miles down the road,
Yes,
and the other
absolutely.
one is when I'm
You
running.
don't remember what lights you went through, what cutoffs, or because again, you were in this trance state, and in trance, there's a lot of amnesia around a lot of the details because again, you were totally out of it. What was the other trance that you were going to mention?
When I'm running and I get a runner's high, I'm
Yes,
running for a half
yes.
hour, 45 minutes, and all of a sudden, I usually use my running to solve problems, because I
Hmm.
find that if I start with a run, okay, I got this issue going, I can think about it, and then I'm running, and 20 minutes later, solution one, solution
Yeah.
two.
Well,
And
you're actually using different part of your brain when you're running because again, that forces the brain to go into those other regions that you probably already have trained and associated for problem solving. So makes perfect sense. Music is another kind of trance-inducing state. When really any one of the senses can trigger a trance state. Smelling a certain perfume, you remember that loved one or the one that got away. A picture can be a trance-inducing phenomena. So again, that's just the way the brain works. It's like all communication. Right now, you and I are in a trans communication mode because we're comparing our past to the topic that we're discussing. Even though we don't know what we're going to say next, we know that it's going to flow because again, in a trance state, it just flows. It just happens naturally.
How well does what you've learned with NLP and hypnotism and your experiences there translate into your business now of consulting and training and other things that you do?
100%. Because listen, people in corporate America, in every boardroom, there are inefficient and toxic trans states that are creating havoc with teams in leadership positions. And so it's important to identify where the dysfunction is to begin to dismantle the dysfunction and the trans states that the person is running, or even the team, because teams can get into this collective trans state that everyone is in the shared trans state, and they may not be most efficient because there's other factors that lead into the creation of that trans.
So if I'm leading a team, the team kind of all gets into that same trance at the same time, depending on what that mission is.
That's correct. That's correct. You were a fighter pilot. Behind the cockpit, you go into a trance state to where you're performing millions of micro decisions. And again, that's the function of the trance state, is it allows us to do a lot of unconscious things. Imagine if you had to consciously think about what do I need to do next. It would be you would have been killed.
Well, it took me about 6 months to feel comfortable driving over 120 miles an hour regularly in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, okay, let's drive at 80 for a while, 90 for a while. I had to become accustomed to it. And I'm
Sure.
constantly looking in that rear view mirror because that other guy's doing 200 miles an hour. But I noticed that, I go home for lunch, 120, 130 miles an hour, not even thinking anything of it. Uh,
Exactly.
Back here, I get up to 75 on the freeway here in Texas, and there's still people passing me, and I have a concern. But I'm
Yes.
doing, 50 miles an hour less than what I was doing
Yeah.
in
So
Germany.
think about how you use different trances according to the environment.
Yeah.
And I look at people's trances around holidays because they tend to go into these repetitive trances when people get together, or in networking, people go into these automatic trance states.
One of the best questions I like to ask in networking is, "Hey, Victor, nice to meet you. I'm doing, tell me, what do you do for fun?" Because
Yeah,
it's a question
it's
that
unexpected. It's unexpected.
nobody ever asked. And some people, they finally realize that they don't do anything for fun. It's
Yeah,
all work. And
yeah,
they're kind of, you can see it on their face. They all of a sudden, well, I do work for fun. No, that's not exactly. What do you do for fun to get away
yeah.
from work? And it's interesting sometimes that the responses you get, the physical and the facial response,
Yes.
especially. So when you have somebody and you're training them, how do you break some of these toxic trances?
That's a very good question. There, you have to look at what is the dynamics. For example, let's say that I'm working with a team leader that uh, that there are different agendas. You know that in teams there's layers of agendas, and one team interacts with another team, and what happens in one team affects the entire organization. So I tend to look at what are the dynamics. What is it that needs to happen here today, and can I do it fast as I'm accustomed to doing it? Or does this need setup so that it's not too disruptive and too embarrassing for the team leader? So again, you have to look at the big picture uh, so that you're able to do an ecological intervention. What that means is ecology is the study of consequences. You have to look at, if this change takes place, what are going to be the consequences within the team, within the organization, and how is it going to affect the whole? Make sense?
Yeah, I was thinking, if you can see a positive change coming out of it, but the infrastructure and the dynamics would probably not want to continue to support that. Is that something that you would recognize? And
Absolutely. In fact, I have turned down different projects because I knew that there was not buy-in at the highest level. I'll give you a specific example. Two examples, actually. I was brought in to a TV network, and I was going to work with one station. They wanted me to work with all the different teams. So the production crews, there's a day crew and there's a night crew for like evening news and different projects that are done at night. So the morning couldn't get along with the night, and so I brought them in together. We ironed out all the differences. There was a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of ill feelings, because again, just misunderstandings and lack of communication. So those two teams are functioning. They're working like a well-oiled machine. And then I was supposed to go on to the presenters because again, there was a lot of friction between the presenters for the different shows. So I come back. Everything was on schedule. Everything was going well. I come back the following week, and the dysfunction once again is at play. Why? Because the station manager decided that he wanted one of his pet projects to take precedent over anything else, and so he undid the structure and the processes that we had created and gotten everyone to buy in. And of course, the dysfunction was because of the general manager. And when that happened, I told my contact, I want to meet with the general manager, and if he and I'm not going to hold my breath if he doesn't meet with me, but I'm not continuing this project. I'm going to terminate this project if things are not done in a way that I feel that is going to be a win-win for everyone. And of course, I never heard back. So, given that experience, right after that, I was contacted by a hospital that they wanted to completely re-engineer the entire hospital. And I said, I before I do that, you guys have to pay me for a 4-hour training of the excuse me, the president and the executive team. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a presentation of how this is going to happen. Now, my agenda was I wanted to see what was the interaction between the executive team and the president, because that would tell me everything. So at the end, I knew that this was not a viable project because there wasn't buy-in by the president because he would have to surrender some of his power that he had basically acquired and was not willing to relinquish. And so I gave him some questions to think about, and I said, if you guys come up with viable answers to these questions, and you guys want to proceed, then we can proceed. They never called back again because again, why go through re-engineering an organization when there is not total buy-in at the highest level? Daniel Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, which I taught at UTEP, he says unless there is buy-in at the highest level, then you can try to produce change from the bottom up, and it's not going to be pervasive.
I've seen similar things. I've done a couple of consulting jobs for some different companies over the years, and uh, they'll make the change, and a year, 2 years later, it's exactly right back the way it was.
Mhm.
Or there's somebody so adamant they want that particular function or job or activity changed so they can put it on their resume to get a better job somewhere else. You can get a lot of back feed on why people are doing things,
Yes,
but
dysfunction by design.
you absolutely, it really and truly is. What can I do for me right now? And
Exactly.
but the before we get into the end of the show, which we're just about at, COVID. I know that we had a certain way of doing things, and all of a sudden, people weren't at work; they were home. People were laid off. Businesses were closing. Now you come back into that transitory deal where is it still contagious? And now I'm pretty sure, at least in Texas, we're pretty much out of it. How did COVID affect what you were doing? Did it make better some of the ways that you're doing things?
Actually, COVID increased my business because, again, there was so much stress and paranoia that I was doing a lot of remote Zoom consultations throughout the country and even into Mexico. So business-wise, it was a boom for me. What I am seeing, though, is that COVID forever changed our society and our families. Think about it like this, Red. It takes 40 days to produce a different mindset or habit. And look at how long we were under lockdown and under the fear of COVID. And so the science of neuroplasticity tells us that our brains were literally changed. And so we have a new brain post COVID that is still trying to adapt to a new normal. And you've seen from some of my social media postings that my partner Vicky Cruz and I are into the school systems now doing a program that she originated inside of COVID under lockdown when children were having suicidal ideations, when small children in middle school were depressed and didn't know and didn't have a system to process all those feelings. She created this hero program, and now we're taking it out into the community and throughout the country. So, again, this is a byproduct of not having a system to adapt to these kinds of deep traumas and changes.
And it's something that we really did not have any exposure to even plan for earlier because we didn't know how long it was going to last, how debilitating it was going to be. There were just too many unknowns at the front to even predict what could happen.
Correct.
From an individual perspective, you might be able to thrive because you can see the little pathway and walk down it. But for, I think, the majority of our population, we just kind of had to sit back and wait for things to happen to us.
Correct.
Okay, we're down toward the end. Why don't you tell people what services, products, things that you have that you can offer, and who would be good clients for you, and what's the best way for them to reach you?
So I offer a public speaking training course since, as you can see from this certificate here, I'm a former Dale Carnegie School instructor. So I have an upcoming public speaking course for anyone that's interested in upping their skills as a public speaker. Also, I'm a business consultant and a corporate trainer. So those are the two areas of expertise that I'm now focused on. Of course, I always do hypnosis one-on-one with individuals. They're welcome to contact me if they would like to overcome some deep traumatic change. I'm a trauma expert. I've worked in the criminal justice system for 10 years, and so I've seen it all. I can, with most cases, I can produce deep change in one session. I've have a history of being able to cure PTSD in one session. But again, no two cases are alike. So if you are suffering from any kind of trauma, be sure and contact me. If your companies, my specialty is companies that do $5 to $15 million, and I have one client that does $200 million, to where I do a lot of training in personnel recruitment for specialized talent. So that's what I specialize in now.
And Victor, you can do both in person and on Zoom or some kind
That's
of video
correct.
interface.
I actually mastered the ability to do hypnosis online during COVID, Red, and I'm able to get almost near the same results in person as through Zoom.
I'm so glad to hear that. I really and truly am. Victor Escalante, 210, phone number 216-6915, as you can see there, but for our audio audience that cannot see our screen, 210-216-6915 is his phone number, and VictorEscalante.com is his website, and he can be reached at Victor@VictorEscalante.com. Victor, Victor, Escalante, ESCALANTE.com. Victor, thank you so very much. I would love to have you back on the show again sometime in the future, because I think that NLP and hypnosis is just one of those things that people are totally amazed, and we can educate some more people down the road.
My pleasure, Red. Good seeing you again, my friend.
Take care. Red O'Loughlin here, signing out on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Next week, we'll be back on our regular schedule on Thursdays. I had a funeral this week, and we had to change dates. But regardless, please check out USA Global TV and .com and look on YouTube for USA Global TV and look at the playlist, and we can catch all the previous episodes. Bye now.
The last few days have been really amazing. I had a trainer course from the British School of Etiquette.
And I must say it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made and one of the best investments I've made in my own training and development.
Now, words alone will not describe the transformation and the positive path that I have traveled with the British School of Etiquette.
I find I learned a lot from the lessons this time I came.
The last few days with the British School of Etiquette have been fantastic.
And what I've learned now is really beyond my expectations.
This is the most rewarding experience and the best investment I have made this year.
It was just great. I learned so much, and when I go back to Belgium I will incorporate a lot of it into my day-to-day life and business.
It's been absolutely wonderful for the whole week that we were here.
I feel transformed, and I feel like blowing a trumpet and tell people, come and do this school, this class is the best, this is the best school ever.
You should take it. It will change your life immediately.
I am now able to teach other people how to bring the best of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, BSC.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fostering better personal and professional relationships. Module 8, Mastery in Dining Etiquette. Building your confidence to perfect the subtleties of dining with finesse, enhancing your social savviness at any table. Step into the Polished Professional program where poise, elegance, and excellence aren't just taught,